All right, Alexander, let's revisit Russiagate and Robert Mueller, the FBI, James Comey, and the witch hunt against then candidate Trump and now US President Donald Trump. And in previous videos, it's been debunked. We've been debunking it for a while, but now it's been pretty much officially debunked, the CrowdStrike hoax. And we went over that in the video, how they've walked that back. The deep state, the swamp, Mueller, the FBI, call it what you will. They've walked it back. CrowdStrike. They've walked back now the St. Petersburg troll narrative and the Facebook ads that threw the election and the indictments against the troll farm in Russia. That's been walked back as well. And now we have another shoe that has dropped. And this one has to do with the Trump Tower meeting and Natalia Veselnitskaya, that has been now pretty much proven to be a sting operation and I think will be fully debunked very, very soon. And that also involves Paul Manafort and Trump Jr. In that story, in that narrative. So once again, we are seeing in the middle of this corona pandemic and this panic and this crisis that is going on, we are seeing the Russiagate witch hunt hoax completely collapsing in front of our eyes. And it seems every week we have a new narrative that is coming up. So get into the story, Alexander. And you may want to mention some of the characters involved.
Yes,
I think we have very interesting characters. Not only Natalia, but in Browder and the Magnitsky Act. And there's a lot of history and moving parts here.
Absolutely. Now, can I just say, you said that it's been almost debunked. Well, if you're talking about what was said when the Trump Tower revelation, this is the famous or infamous meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and the Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya, which took place in June 2016 during the US presidential election. If you're talking about whether or not it's been debunked, I think we can say conclusively, without any hesitation at all, that it has been officially and entirely debunked. Now, let's just recap and remind ourselves about what we're talking about. There was this extremely strange event which happened in June 2016. Donald Trump Jr., who is quite clearly a clever man, and I say that because he managed to evade what was clearly, I think, a trap for him, received from a man called Goldston, who is some kind of pop music promoter, a series of emails. This is in May, June 2016, telling him that an important Russian lawyer, the Crown Prosecutor of Russia, there is no such person, a lawyer acting for the Russian government, was coming along because the Russian government wanted to provide official information, official documents. This is what the emails actually say. People have forgotten about these emails, in which the Russian government wanted to help the Trump campaign, and that this would help them by exposing the nefarious links which Hillary Clinton had with the Russians. So Donald Trump Jr. said, right, yeah, this is most interesting. Be very interested to meet this person. And sure enough, a Russian lawyer, duly turned up. And this Russian lawyer was Natalia Veselnitskaya. And she came and met Donald Trump Jr. And there was this meeting in Trump Tower. And two other people who were also present were Jared Kushner, who is Donald Trump's son-in-law, and who was playing a prominent role in his campaign, and the then campaign manager, who was, of course, Paul Manafort. Anyway, they all met with Veselnitskaya, and Veselnitskaya, according to Donald Trump Jr., had actually nothing to offer about Hillary Clinton, and instead wanted to talk about the Magnitsky Act. And Donald Trump Jr. Sensed that there was something wrong and terminated the meeting after 20 minutes, because telling Veselnitskaya that it's all very interesting what she was saying about the Magnitsky Act, but this has nothing to do with Donald Trump, and that this was matters that she needed to address to the current U.S. authorities, the current U.S. government, which of course at that time was led by Barack Obama. Anyway, that was Donald Trump Jr.'s story. What then happened was that the following year, in the middle of all the hubbub and fire and thunder around Russiagate, the New York Times published an account of this meeting between Veselnitskaya and Donald Trump Jr. And by the way, we've never found out the source which provided the New York Times with the information about this meeting, though I'm going to speculate about who that source was. Anyway, so the New York Times publishes information about this meeting, and of course this is immediately seized upon by people, the Democrats, the media. This is, I should say, after Mueller has been appointed, by all of these people as proof of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. After all, here we have a meeting between Veselnitskaya, a Russian lawyer, and Donald Trump Jr., and all of the Goldstein emails suddenly appear, and they all seem to talk about, we're going to provide information about Hillary Clinton, and this is all about a Russian government lawyer coming along to support or assist the Trump campaign. So it all looks like collusion. Only Donald Trump Jr. comes along and says, actually, what happened is that this person Veselnitskaya appeared to have nothing to do with the Russian government. She had no information to offer. It was entirely about the Magnitsky Act, and I showed her the door. And of course, people didn't really believe it. And you had all these wild speculations. And I remember Anthony Zucker, for example, at the BBC, saying that this is clear proof of collusion, and The Guardian writing editorials saying it's clear collusion, and of course all sorts of articles appearing in the American media saying the same thing. And bizarrely, even Steve Bannon, who should know better, went ahead and said that this meeting was in some way treasonous, which it never was. Well, what we've now discovered, and this has come out in an article by Real Clear Investigations, which is a good investigative website which gets all this information that's coming out now, and this is definite, confirmed information. The FBI, within 4 days of that meeting, had interviewed the person who actually interpreted for Donald Trump Jr. when he met Veselnitskaya. Veselnitskaya speaks English, but not very well. I mean, we've all heard her. And there was actually an interpreter there. And that interpreter was a man called Anatoly Samochornov. And he is a freelance translator and interpreter who mainly works or does a lot of work for the US State Department and is completely trusted by the US authorities. And Samochornov gave an account of this meeting, which was identical to the one provided by Donald Trump Jr. In other words, he completely corroborated Donald Trump Jr.'s account. So from that moment on, there's never been any question at all. There was no collusion at that meeting. There was no secret information passing by. There was, as I said, this very strange request to meet this person, Veselnitskaya, that came from this man Goldstein, who's British, a British pop music promoter in Russia. And when Donald Trump Jr. met her, he was suspicious of her, very uneasy about the meeting. When she started to talk about the Magnitsky Act, he showed her the door. And that's all there was. So there's no collusion, no contact between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. Veselnitskaya was not working for the Russian government, and the whole thing looked extremely strange. Now, there is another very remarkable twist to this story, which is that at the same time as she was meeting Donald Trump Jr., just a few hours before, and then again a few hours after this meeting, Veselnitskaya met someone else. And who was that someone else? It was Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS. Now, this is very strange and very remarkable. And again, it didn't come out until much later. And if you read 90% of the accounts about these contacts between Veselnitskaya and Donald Trump Jr., if you read the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Guardian or the BBC, or you listen to the MSNBC or CNN or whatever, they never mention the fact that, as I said, this meeting between Veselnitskaya and Donald Trump Jr. was sandwiched between these two meetings with Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS to remind us who Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS are. They are this company that was carrying out various research and all kinds of political activities on behalf of Hillary Clinton's campaign. They were being paid by Hillary Clinton to do it. They are staunch Democrats. And they were also, of course, the people who commissioned Christopher Steele, who was the man who was preparing the dossier. And at the time that these meetings took place between Veselnitskaya and Glenn Simpson was also in touch with Christopher Steele, and Christopher Steele was busy putting his dossier together. So, coincidence? Well, we've always been told so up to now. This is just chance, because, as it turns out, Glenn Simpson and Veselnitskaya were working together on a court case in the United States involving a Russian company, and which was being sued, or rather prosecuted by the US authorities on information provided by Bill Browder and Hermitage Capital. We will come to that in a moment. But we've always been asked, we've always been told that this is all coincidence, this is just chance that these meetings took place. Well, I've always been very suspicious of this. And in fact, I wrote at the time, when very first article I wrote, after we learnt about this meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and Veselnitskaya, that this looked to me, this had the feel to me of a possible sting. In other words, an attempt to trap Donald Trump Jr. and to create a scandal. And the reason I did that was because Veselnitskaya was being so completely misrepresented in these Goldstone emails. It was being made out that she was something to do with the Russian government. And it was also being made out that she was going to provide the Trump campaign with information, official Russian government information about Hillary Clinton's contacts with Russia. And that was simply not true. I mean, Veselnitskaya is not a Russian government lawyer. She does not work for the Russian government, but it seemed very close to the allegations that Christopher Steele in his dossier was making. Now, bear in mind, I said that, I wrote that before I knew about Glenn Simpson's role in the Trump Tower meeting. Anyway, if you go to Christopher Steele's dossier, the very first report that he provided in June 2016 says that the Russian government, the Russian authorities had established this connection with the Trump campaign, and they were going to provide the Trump campaign with information that the Russian government had about Hillary Clinton. So that seems very like what these emails from Goldston were implying that Veselnitskaya was going to do. But it all seemed like a loose end because it didn't seem as if Veselnitskaya actually did provide or really tried to provide any information about Hillary Clinton at this meeting, except we've now learned that she did, in fact, try to provide information to Donald Trump Jr. at this meeting. And this information was that Bill Browder, this interesting man that we're going to talk about in a moment, who was in trouble with the Russian authorities over a tax fraud, and Hermitage Capital, business associates of these people, Russian business associates, people who had oligarchs, people who were wanted in Russia for tax evasion charges, people who had taken out of Russia billions of dollars illegally, were funding the Hillary Clinton campaign. And who told Veselnitskaya this? It turns out that it was Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS who said this to Veselnitskaya. Veselnitskaya said this during the Trump Tower meeting to Donald Trump Jr. Donald Trump Jr. wasn't interested. So here's my theory. I think this was a sting. I think this was set up. I think that Veselnitskaya genuinely was propelled towards Donald Trump Jr. with this information. The idea was that she would float this idea about the Hillary Clinton campaign being funded by Russian oligarchs who had stolen money from Russia. Donald Trump Jr. was supposed to be, catch this bait, pass it on. Donald Trump would then, run with this story, and then it would be exposed that this was actually provided in this way through Veselnitskaya. The Trump dossier, the Steele dossier, would then come out, which would say that the Russians were assisting Trump by providing this secret information. And we'd have the collusion. We'd have the whole appearance of collusion provided, and there would be a huge scandal. And of course, the Trump campaign would at that point go down in flames. But what happened was Donald Trump Jr. sensed that there was something wrong, and he sent Veselnitskaya out of the meeting, and he didn't pass on this information to Donald Trump, and it wasn't used in the Trump campaign. So I think it was an attempt. This is my view. It was attempted to sting, only it didn't work.
Alexander, this is an article by John Solomon on 7/14/2017. Homeland Security confirms special entry for Russian lawyer. The Homeland Security Department confirmed Friday that Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya was granted special entry to the United States on multiple occasions in 2015 and 16 at the request of the Justice Department. It also said Veselnitskaya eventually won a non-immigrant work visa around the time she met President Trump's eldest son in New York last summer. The Justice Department at that time was headed by Loretta Lynch. What do you make of that? And also the fact that you have all these people surrounding this story, like Browder, Simpson, who you've touched upon.
Yeah.
Here you have a Loretta Lynch piece to the puzzle, which of course leads back to Obama.
Well, it's more pieces of the jigsaw. I find this extremely suspicious. First of all, why is Veselnitskaya able to come and go from the United States as she pleases? Now, there is a court case going on. There is a genuine court case going on between. It's the Brevizon court case between between the Justice Department and a Russian company, which well, let's actually take a step back and explain the story, because it's a complicated and intricate story, and it touches on Hermitage Capital and Browder and all of this. Now,
but she's a Russian government asset,
yeah,
supposedly, as they were
supposedly,
claiming, which
exactly,
we know is not
exactly.
true. But
Which we know is not true. But here's a Russian government asset, and she's being assisted to come to the United States by the Justice Department. It seems extremely strange. Now, let's take a step back and understand where Bill Browder and Hermitage Capital come in. Bill Browder was a very important American investor, businessman. He's now actually got British citizenship. He was heavily involved in investing in Russia in the 1990s and early 2000s. His fund is called Hermitage Capital. He was, for a time, I believe, the biggest foreign investor in Russia. Then in the mid 2000s, the Russian state started to bring proceedings against him, alleging that he'd been involved in massive tax evasion. He was thrown out of the country. He had to leave Russia, but his accountant, not his lawyer, I should stress, he always claims that this man is his lawyer, but he was in fact his accountant, Sergei Magnitsky, is arrested by the Russian authorities as an accessory to the fraud, alleged fraud. Magnitsky is held in detention on remand for a very long time in a Russian prison, and he dies there. And Browder has started this massive campaign saying that he's a completely innocent person, that what had actually happened was that Magnitsky had identified a fraud on Russian taxpayers carried out not by Browder and his companies, but by corrupt policemen who, in conjunction with gangsters, had stolen some of Browder's companies and were misusing them in order to carry out a tax fraud. This is a very complicated and very bizarre story. What I would say is the Congress, the US Congress, has completely accepted Bill Browder's account of the story as true, and it passed this notorious Magnitsky Act, which imposed individual sanctions on various Russian officials who were allegedly connected both with the fraud that Browder was alleging, and with the alleged death of Magnitsky. And in fact, Browder has been very active in campaigning against the Russian government all around the world, and he has actually been trying to get European governments to pass their own versions of the Magnitsky Act in Europe. Now, what I just wanted to quickly say, this is not a program about all of that. We're going to focus more on Veselnitskaya, but just to say in parenthesis that the European Court of Human Rights has now come out and said in an important judgment that there is clearly evidence that there was a tax fraud, that tax fraud seems to have been one that involved Browder and Magnitsky was properly detained by the Russian authorities as a witness. So that is a major blow to Browder's story, and it is in fact a judgment of the European Court of Human Rights. So I'm just going to say that in passing. But what happened was there was this court case at this time between the Justice Department and a Russian company, Revizon, which supposedly had laundered some of this money, this Russian taxpayers' money. And Browder said that this company, Revizon, had done it in conjunction with these supposedly corrupt Russian policemen and gangsters. And Revizon said, absolutely not. Now, Glenn Simpson and Veselnitskaya were acting in this court case of Revizon, which, by the way, I should say is settled. It was the Justice Department settled it. Now, having said that, this is a Russian company being prosecuted by the Justice Department. Veselnitskaya is acting for them, and she's able to come in and out of the United States completely at will. This is on an issue that is of huge geopolitical significance. It's led to the Magnitsky Act. It's led to all sorts of allegations which have been taken up by the US government against Russia. And it's been seriously suggested that this person, Veselnitskaya, who is apparently or supposedly or allegedly a Russian government asset, even though she isn't, in fact, a Russian government asset, is able to get visas to actually work in the United States. I find that very difficult to believe. And I think it is another important piece in this jigsaw. Maybe there is an innocent explanation for it, but I do find it strange. And clearly, John Solomon found it strange also. But, that's one side of the story. The fact is, we now know that Glenn Simpson told Veselnitskaya about not Browder himself, by the way, or Hermitage, but business associates of Browder's providing funding to the Donald Trump campaign, to the Hillary Clinton campaign, and doing so on the eve of a meeting between Veselnitskaya and Donald Trump Jr. Well, I can't help it. I mean, it seems to me unavoidable that he did that entirely intentionally in order to give credence to this, in order to set up the appearance of collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign. In other words, he was baiting Donald Trump Jr. I can't really see what other purpose that hint had. It seems to be quite obvious that is what Glenn Simpson was trying to do. And if you read the early entries of the Christopher Steele's dossier, they seem to say the same thing. So you have Loretta Lynch's Justice Department helping Veselnitskaya come to the United States. You have Veselnitskaya meeting Glenn Simpson. You have Glenn Simpson passing this information to Veselnitskaya. You have Christopher Steele working for Glenn Simpson and saying that the Russians are going to provide this information about Hillary Clinton's connections to Russia. And you have Veselnitskaya providing the information to Donald Trump Jr. saying Hillary Clinton has connections to Russia because her campaign is being funded by illegal Russian money coming from oligarchs. It seems to me, I have to say this, it seems to me like a sting, except it didn't work.
Was Veselnitskaya a willing asset in all of this, or was she a useful idiot? So my theory is this: either she was spotted by Lynch and the DOJ, and through the connections with Browder, and then you had Glenn Simpson, and I'm sure the FBI played their piece in all of this, and they spotted Veselnitskaya, and they said, okay, we've got this Russian national involved in this case. We're going to use her to entrap the Trump campaign. So did she willingly go along with this, or did they just kind of use her as a useful idiot in all of this, and she was pretty much had no idea that all of this was happening around her? That's my first question. And my second question, it was Glenn Simpson that spoke with the New York Times?
Well, right, okay, yes. Right, let's take it step by step. Firstly,
he's the anonymous source?
Right, I said I would guess who the anonymous source is, but of course you've anticipated me, because that is exactly who I think the anonymous source is. That's exactly what happened. I think it was Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS who passed on the information to the New York Times about this meeting.
Why do you say that?
Who else?
Why do you make that assumption?
Who else would have done it? It wasn't Donald Trump Jr. It wasn't Manafort. It wasn't Kushner. It wasn't the interpreter. It wasn't apparently Veselnitskaya herself. Who else knew about this meeting? Glenn Simpson did. By an obvious process of elimination, it looks to me like it must have been Glenn Simpson who tipped off the New York Times. I can't see who else it was. It seems to me, I say this if somebody else could suggest someone, but I can't see who. So yes, I think it was Glenn Simpson.
We didn't coordinate this, by the way. I was just listening to you. Exactly. I came to that conclusion. That's why.
Well, there you go. I mean, he talks to newspapers. I mean, that's what he does. That's his job. So, I mean, that's what he does. So logically, obviously, he was the person who said it to the New York Times. I mean, by a simple process of elimination, who else knew about this meeting? As I said, he spoke to Veselnitskaya both before the meeting and after the meeting. So he knew about the meeting because Veselnitskaya told him. In fact, frankly, it looks to me as if that second meeting was Veselnitskaya debriefing him.
As a willing asset or as a useful idiot? This is to me, this is an interesting question.
This is a very interesting question. And we have to say, I frankly don't know. But I'm going to guess that she was being manipulated. I've watched Veselnitskaya several times. I don't get the sense that she is a willing asset in this. I might be wrong. And it is an interesting question, and one would love to know and find out. She, of course, insists that she was a completely innocent victim, that she was being used. So maybe she was a useful idiot. That probably is likely. I would say I've listened to her. I mean, I don't think she's perhaps the sharpest knife in the drawer, but she doesn't come across as a complete idiot to me either. So, who knows? But on balance, I think she was being used rather than being an intentional accessory in this. I don't know for
Russia, right?
Oh, she's back in Russia, exactly.
I think you're right there. I think you're right in your assumption. She's been debriefed. I'm absolutely 100% sure she's also been debriefed by the Kremlin.
Oh, of course she has. Of course she has. I mean, the Russians would have been round to her and been asking, "What exactly were you doing there?" I mean, the Russian security services would have been very anxious to find out everything and how it came about that she was being represented to to Donald Trump Jr. as a Russian government lawyer and a Russian official, when she's actually no such thing. I mean, that is, by the way, a very mysterious episode. Those emails, which this man Goldston, by the way, says he just made it all up, that it was his own idea, that he wanted to ginger things up and say, was trying to pretend that she was more important than she was in order to set up this meeting. I have to say, I went along with that for a while, but now that we know more about this meeting, I don't believe that anymore, I have to say. It doesn't make sense to me. I think that she was set up. I think that there was an attempt to make her seem like a Russian official, which she never was. There's no evidence that she was ever involved in that misrepresentation. But the Russian authorities will certainly have wanted to find out about it because, as I said, she was being presented to Donald Trump Jr. as somebody with an official role in the Russian government, which she never had. So the Russian authorities, at the very least, would have wanted an explanation for this. But clearly, she did tell Glenn Simpson that she was meeting with Donald Trump Jr. I don't think it's disputed. And clearly, when Glenn Simpson met with her again, he wanted to have known what passed over the course of that meeting. So I think she was told by Glenn Simpson that this might be somebody who might be able to help with the Revizon case and with the Magnitsky Act, that he set up this meeting with that ostensible purpose. His real purpose, as I said, was to trap Donald Trump Jr. into something that could be spun to look like actual collusion. And when the meeting ended, he would have wanted to know from Veselnitskaya what actually happened. And of course, Veselnitskaya would have reported back that actually nothing did happen. So Glenn Simpson goes away, foiled again. But that's how it looks to me.
I just can't help but wonder if Glenn Simpson coordinated and colluded with Loretta Lynch so that they could position Veselnitskaya to take that meeting, to initiate that meeting? Because I wonder if like the DOJ was kind of like, or if Glenn Simpson went to the DOJ and Hillary Clinton went to Obama and said, look, we need, a prominent Russian official or someone who appears to be close enough to the Kremlin so that we could, try to create this sting operation in and around the Trump campaign. And lo and behold, they went through their database and they said, how about her?
Yeah. Well, can I just say something? Firstly, we have this very strange fact, as I said, that Veselnitskaya is able to come in and out of the United States with absolutely no difficulty with visas and all those sort of things. The red carpet is laid for her. And that is extremely strange. And now we have confirmation that the FBI, within 4 days, knows everything there is to know about this meeting. And nonetheless, and this is the other point which we need to talk about, when Mueller writes his report in 2019, he doesn't say that within 4 days of the publication by the New York Times of the details of this meeting, the FBI knew that Donald Trump Jr.'s account of what happened was true. On the contrary, Mueller and Weissman, Andrew Weissman, his number two, try to concoct an absolutely preposterous legal theory that Donald Trump Jr. had somehow broken campaign finance laws by meeting with Veselnitskaya, which is so nonsensical that they dropped it, even though they mention it in the Mueller report. But they don't actually say in the Mueller report that within 4 days of that meeting, the FBI had actually cleared Donald Trump Jr. of any suspicion of collusion. Now, that is interesting. And given that the FBI was able to move so quickly, did they perhaps already know more about this meeting than anybody knew about? In fact, did they know about this meeting even before they met this interpreter? Did they know about it because word was being passed around through Glenn Simpson and all the various people in the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign? It was reaching all the way up into the Obama administration that this meeting was happening and all sorts of things were going on. Perhaps the FBI were listening into this meeting, or perhaps someone else was. After all, this is before Crossfire Hurricanes formally begins on the 31st of July. But we have had all kinds of information about how people were being wiretapped.
Seems to me the script was already written before it happened.
I know. I mean, these are questions. These are speculations. I think we need to make that very clear, so as not to mislead anybody. These are speculations, but they're not. They are well-grounded speculations. We could ask. We need to know what actually happened, who was informed and who was not. I hope one day Durham and Barr get round to looking at this, because this is very strange. And can I just say one other thing, which is very odd as well? Now, Browder himself never did provide any money to the Hillary Clinton campaign. He couldn't, because as a British citizen, he's not allowed to. But the actual allegation that business associates of Bill Browder, former oligarchs who'd taken money out of the United States, out of Russia, had provided money to the Hillary Clinton campaign. It turns out it's true. I mean, there was one particular group, there were the Ziff brothers, who were apparently connected to Browder. They provided $300,000 to the DNC and $17,700 to Hillary Clinton's campaign. And it may be that there's also been a conflation between the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Hillary Clinton Foundation. And we know that all sorts of people in Russia and elsewhere were putting money into the Hillary Clinton Foundation. So that allegation actually is true. So again, how did all that come out? Why was Glenn Simpson passing on that information about people he was working for? Remember, he was working for the Hillary Clinton campaign. Why was he providing information that was detrimental to the Hillary Clinton campaign to Veselnitskaya just before she meets Donald Trump Jr.? It's all very strange and very interesting. So if you put all the pieces together, we have all the pieces of a jigsaw. We have enough pieces now to know that all sorts of very strange things were going on. And I have to say, one, it looks like a sting to me. Two, I think Glenn Simpson seems to be the person who, if anybody was carrying out the sting or was orchestrating the sting, it looks like it was him. And bear in mind, that's the kind of work he does. And lastly, if the Justice Department had a role in it, well, that would explain why Veselnitskaya was able to move in and out of the United States so easily, and why the FBI took such a relaxed view of this meeting.
And you have the Browder component, which not many people talk about, but the genesis of much of the Russophobia, and the sanctions, and the antagonism towards Russia originates with Browder and the Magnitsky Act.
Well, Browder has fought a long and intense campaign against Russia ever since he had to leave the country, I think in 2007. I mean, he's been a major figure promoting this anti-Russian narrative. He does so at every opportunity. But as I said, he's now suffered a major blow with this decision of the European Court of Human Rights, which of course has not been published or widely circulated, even though it has actually been the first Western court to investigate this matter thoroughly and carefully. Now, I just wanted to say, I mean, Browder, as I understand it, his links are primarily with the Democrats. So I don't know what his role exactly is in all of this, but the fact of the matter is, people associated with him were, as it happens, providing money to the Hillary Clinton campaign. Maybe not hundreds of millions of dollars, as has been suggested, but certainly they were providing funding. And who knows, maybe they had some knowledge of this also. But I'm not saying that because I don't know.
Fascinating stuff. All right.
Well, it is extraordinary. And I think you're absolutely right when you said at the beginning, we got all of these things. Firstly, we've seen the CrowdStrike walking back on the allegation that it was the Russians who provided the DNC and Podesta emails to WikiLeaks. They're walking back on that. They're admitting they don't know about that. We now have the collapse of the indictment, the case that Robert Mueller brought against Concord and Prigozhin and the company, the St. Petersburg troll farm. That case has collapsed. That indictment has been dropped, and Prigozhin is now threatening to sue the Justice Department. And now we have this information. We now learn that, in fact, that Trump Tower meeting, the FBI knew almost from the outset that there was nothing untoward or illegal happened at that meeting, and kept it secret. And Mueller was, as I said, on the contrary, trying to construct some kind of absurd theory, which even he had to accept didn't have any mileage. And at the same time, we learn all these things. We learned that, as I said, Glenn Simpson was seeding information to one of the participants at that meeting, Veselnitskaya, which looks like it was intended, or at least gives the appearance that it might have been intended to give weight to this narrative of collusion that his other employee, Christopher Steele, was busy trying to construct. So, it all looks very bad. It looks extremely ugly. And the Russiagate narrative is not only falling apart rapidly, but it does increasingly look like there was a conspiracy. Only it wasn't a conspiracy between Donald Trump and the Russians. It was a conspiracy between the Democrats, the DNC, certainly sections of the Obama administration, and involving people like Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele and the FBI, with a view, and the Justice Department, with a view to knocking out Donald Trump. So, I mean, we're getting more and more pieces of that conspiracy are gradually coming together. And I suspect if once we get through this health crisis that we're in at the moment, and all of this starts to get further into prominence, and once Barr and Duran do their job, which I think they will, I'm sure we're going to find out an awful lot more.
And that's the problem, that all of this is happening at a time when the world, rightly so, is fixated on
the health
crisis.
On the health crisis, absolutely, which is a great shame. Though I have to say,
or a great coincidence.
Or a great way, it's not coincidence. But I have to say, I mean, we should also realize, of course, that the media, New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN, Guardian, BBC, all these people who made such a huge fuss about the Trump town meeting, they wouldn't have published all the information about that meeting, which has just come to light and which we've discussed on this program. We are publishing it now. We're discussing it now. As I said, we've engaged in some speculations, but we're discussing it now because it is important. And this health crisis is not going to go on forever. The Barr-Durham investigation is still underway, and hopefully there will come a point when it will all come to, it will all come back into focus, and we will see all of these things coming into the broad light of day. And we will know exactly what role everybody had in this affair.
You're right, Alexander. But to close things out, I mean, we're reporting on it as we always have done in reporting on what's happened in Russiagate. But the big difference is that Trump is unable to tweet about this stuff.
No.
And Fox News, rightly so, once again, is not reporting on this because they're completely occupied with the corona crisis. So, I mean, all of this stuff is happening at a time when you just can't, report this back to the public.
No, exactly right. I mean, that's true. I mean, we are doing it, but we're a small channel, but we are doing it because it is important. And that's, I think, another thing to say. I mean, we will get through this crisis, this health crisis that we're going through. It won't last forever. It will probably last, their estimates, that'll be around 12 to 16 weeks, possibly. I mean, these are guesses, but we will get through it eventually. And this is all important. I mean, we are looking at what clearly was the 2016 election, clearly was the most corrupt election in American political history.
Says a lot. All right. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much, guys. If you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell. Smash that like. Look for us on iTunes and Soundcloud for an audio copy of this video. And please donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar. Your donation really helps us out a lot. We are getting continuously demonetized by YouTube all the time, so please help us out. And also go to the Duran shop and pick up some awesome merchandise. We got magic mugs, we got awesome polos. What else do we have? What do you have over there, Alexander?
Well, I have next to me the Patriot Beacon, which is one of the most amazing torches that I have ever had. You see, it does exactly what we do on the Duran. It puts the light where it's needed to be. So we've just shown on this program that we are the light that searches out the truth in the dark and murky corners of Russiagate and the deep state and Obama's Justice Department and James Comey's FBI. Well, the Patriot Beacon does exactly the same. When you're in a dark place, you are extremely well equipped. if you have the Patriot Beacon with you. Let me say, first of all, it is the best torch I have ever had. It is incredibly strong. It is aluminium. It is solar powered, so it will never let you down. You don't have to worry about batteries or anything of that kind. It's got every accessory you could possibly need. So if your iPad or your iPhone or your smartphone is out, well, there's a USB port there, so you can recharge without difficulty. It's got a magnet, so if you're in your car, and I usually keep mine in my car, well, you can sort of attach it onto one of the metal things. It's if you need to break through your windscreen because you got yourself in trouble, well, you can. You can also use it as a hammer, by the way. And if you need to cut your seat belt because you're in a bad accident, well, you can do that too. So it's got all of that. It's also got a compass, and it's also got an alarm, which I am not going to press, because if I do, well, my dogs will come running, and that can be quite disruptive. But it's quite a loud alarm. So it is a fantastic torch. It is the best torch I've had. It is incredibly strong. In fact, it looks indestructible. And in these difficult times with which we live, you can't get a better torch than this. And it is incredibly useful. And if you need it, well, in fact, my dog has just appeared because he's heard that I've got a Patriot Beacon there. But if you need a torch, I strongly recommend one. So Alex, at the end of this, will explain to you how you can get one, but I cannot recommend the Patriot Beacon too strongly.
And it ships internationally. Let's not forget that. It ships internationally. And using the code Duran20, you get a 20% discount as well. I'll put all the information in the description box down below. Go ahead.
Indeed. And just to say, by the way, that things are still shipping internationally. The courier companies and the postal services are still functioning normally. I can confirm that because I've just been receiving things from both the United States and from Switzerland and all sorts of places. Of course, that is the Patriot Beacon. I'll just show it again. But we also have our own things in our shop. We have our amazing Duran mugs. And this one has the emblem of Russia's Alpha Force, which is Russia's special forces unit. It's its toughest terrorism unit. I just heard, by the way, that they've been in action again. There was an attempted terrorist incident in Moscow, and apparently the security forces came and disarmed the person who was about to carry it out on a tip-off. And it's quite likely it was these guys that did that. And can I just say, it's an amazing mug. It is beautiful, strong. It keeps your tea hot. It keeps your coffee hot. It keeps your beer and your champagne cold. It's the best mug you can have. You can also find on our shop amazing shirts, polo shirts like the one I'm wearing now, 100% cotton, with the double-headed eagle of the Duran there. Extremely smart and elegant, and you can wear them in wonderful places, smart places and casual places and all sorts of things. And we've got other kinds of shirts. We've got short-sleeved T-shirts, long-sleeved T-shirts of comparable quality, and we've got V-neck shirts and hats and hoodies and stickers and ebooks. You can find them all on our shop. You can support us by coming to our shop and buying them there, and Alex will tell you how to do it.
Just go to the duranshop.com. You'll find a link in the description box down below. And Patriotic Legacy to purchase the Patriot Beacon. You'll find a link for that as well in the description box down below. When you put the code Duran20, you get 20% off that product. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.